The sun was setting over the vast expanse of the desert, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson. A lone mare wandered to the barren land, her hooves stirring up clouds of dust as she moved with an urgency that seemed unnatural for a horse alone in the wilderness. Her coat glistened under the fading light, but there was something about her demeanor, something restless, almost desperate, that caught the attention of anyone who dared to cross her path. In this desolate part of the Wild West, where cacti stood like silent sentinels and coyotes howled at the moon, it wasn't uncommon for travelers to encounter stray animals. But this particular mare carried with her a sense of mystery, as though she were leading someone or something to a destination unknown. Little did they know, her journey would unravel secrets buried deep within the sands of time. It all began when Jack Tanner, a weary prospector with dirt-streaked hands and calloused feet, stumbled upon the mare near a dried-up riverbed. He had been wandering aimlessly for days, his water skin nearly empty and his spirits lower than the horizon. The mare stopped suddenly, her ears perked forward as if listening to some distant sound only she could hear. Jack approached cautiously, wary of the strange energy radiating from her. "Easy now," he murmured, extending a hand. To his surprise, the mare didn't shy away. Instead, she nudged him gently, as if urging him to follow. And so, against his better judgment, Jack trailed behind the mare as she led him deeper into the desert. The wind whispered secrets through the sagebrush, and shadows lengthened as twilight descended. They passed by jagged cliffs that loomed ominously above them, their faces carved by centuries of erosion. The air grew cooler, carried with the faint scent of rain, a promise unfulfilled in this parched land. As darkness enveloped the world around them, the mare finally came to a halt. She stood before a dilapidated shack, its wooden walls weathered and splintered from years of neglect. A single window stared out blankly, its glass cracked and dirty. It looked abandoned, forgotten by the passage of time. Yet the mare remained still, her gaze fixed on the door as if waiting for Jack to make the first move. Jack hesitated, his instincts screaming warnings he couldn't quite articulate. What could possibly be inside? Was this some kind of trap set by bandits or worse? But then, curiosity outweighed caution, and he reached for the rusted handle. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dim interior lit faintly by the glow of moonlight filtering through gaps in the roof. At first glance, the room appeared empty, save for a few pieces of broken furniture scattered haphazardly across the floor. But then, amidst the clutter, Jack noticed movement, a faint stirring near the corner. His heart pounded as he stepped closer, every step echoing softly against the wooden planks beneath his boots. And there, wrapped in tattered blankets, lay a baby. Its tiny face was pale, its lips trembling as soft cries filled the otherwise silent space. Jack froze, stunned by the sight. A baby? Here, in the middle of nowhere? How had it ended up here? As he knelt beside the child, he noticed something even more peculiar. Its eyes. They weren't just any ordinary eyes. No, these eyes held a depth, a wisdom far beyond what one might expect from such a young soul. There was something unbelievable about them, something hidden, buried beneath layers of innocence and vulnerability. But then, another sound broke through the night, a low growl emanating from outside the shack. Jack turned sharply, his hand instinctively reaching for the revolver holstered at his side. Through the doorway, two pairs of glowing eyes locked onto him, belonging to wolves that had likely been drawn by the baby's cries. Without hesitation, Jack grabbed the infant and backed further into the shack, shielding it with his body as the wolves circled menacingly. "Stay back," Jack shouted, his voice trembling despite his best efforts to sound commanding. The wolves paused, their heads tilting slightly as they assessed the situation. For a moment, it seemed as though they were considering whether to attack or retreat. Then, unexpectedly, the mare reappeared, her presence commanding enough to deter the predators. With a final snarl, the wolves slinked away into the darkness, leaving Jack and the baby alone once more. Breathing heavily, Jack sank to the ground, cradling the child close to his chest. Questions swirled in his mind like tumbleweeds in a storm. Who had left this baby here? Why? And those eyes, what did they mean? He refused to believe that fate had brought him to this place purely by chance. No, There had to be a reason, a purpose. Hours passed, or perhaps mere minutes. It was hard to tell in the stillness of the desert night. Eventually, the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, casting golden light across the landscape. Jack decided he needed answers, and the only way to find them was to take the baby to the nearest settlement, Redemption Springs, a small town nestled between rolling hills and dense pine forests. The ride there was arduous, the heat relentless and the terrain unforgiving. Along the way, Jack encountered various obstacles. A rattlesnake coiled lazily in his path, a sudden sandstorm that threatened to obscure his vision. But he pressed on, driven by a determination he hadn't felt in years. By the time they reached Redemption Springs, both man and horse were exhausted, yet neither faltered. Redemption Springs was bustling with activity despite the early hour. Merchants hawked their wares, children laughed as they chased each other through the streets, and horses whinnied impatiently as their owners negotiated prices. Jack dismounted stiffly, clutching the baby tightly in one arm, while steering the mare with the other. He made his way toward the general store, hoping to find someone willing to help. Inside, the shopkeeper, a grizzled old man named Abe, raised an eyebrow at the sight of Jack and the infant. "What do we have here?" he asked gruffly, setting down the ledger he'd been scribbling in. "It's a long story," Jack replied, shifting uncomfortably under the man's scrutinizing gaze. "I found him, or rather, the mare led me to him." Abe scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Well, I reckon you've got yourself a puzzle there. Best we get word out. See if anyone knows anything about the little fella." Word spread quickly throughout the town, drawing curious onlookers and concerned citizens alike. Some offered theories, speculating that the baby belonged to a family who had fallen victim to bandits or disease. Others suggested foul play, whispering darkly about curses and omens tied to the child's unusual eyes. Meanwhile, Jack stayed close to the baby, unwilling to let it out of sight. Days turned into weeks, and still no definitive answers emerged. Just when hope seemed lost, a stranger arrived in town, a woman cloaked in black, her face partially obscured by a veil. She moved silently among the townsfolk, observing everything without speaking a word. When she finally entered the general store, all conversation ceased, replaced by an uneasy silence. "I'm looking for the boy," she said simply, her voice smooth yet commanding. Jack stepped forward, his protective instincts flaring. "Who are you, and how do you know about him?" The woman lowered her veil, revealing features marked by sorrow and resilience. "My name is Eleanor Hayes. That child is my son." Gasps rippled to the crowd. Disbelief etched onto every face. Jack studied her carefully, searching for any sign of deceit, but her expression remained steady, her gaze unwavering as it met his own. "How can we trust you?" he demanded, his grip tightening protectively around the baby. Eleanor sighed, pulling a locket from beneath her cloak. Inside was a photograph of a young couple holding a newborn baby. The resemblance was undeniable. "This should answer your question," she said quietly. Reluctantly, Jack handed the baby over, watching as Eleanor cradled him tenderly. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks as she whispered words only the child could hear. It was clear she had endured unimaginable pain, her journey to reclaim her son fraught with hardship and danger. As it turned out, Eleanor had fled her home after discovering a sinister plot involving powerful men who sought to exploit her son's unique abilities. Those eyes, so extraordinary and full of untapped potential, had become a target for greed and corruption. She had entrusted the baby to a trusted ally, instructing them to hide him until it was safe to return. However, tragedy struck when the ally was ambushed, leaving the baby alone in the wilderness with nothing but the faithful mare to guide him. Now reunited, mother and child prepared to leave Redemption Springs, bound for a new life far away from prying eyes and dangerous intentions. Before departing, Eleanor thanked Jack sincerely, acknowledging the role he played in bringing them together. "You may not realize it," she told him, "but you've done more than save my son. You've given me hope again." And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon once more, casting long shadows across the dusty streets of Redemption Springs, the trio rode off into the distance. The mare trotted confidently ahead, her mission accomplished. Behind them, the townsfolk watched in awe, their hearts heavy with admiration and gratitude. Yet, even as the story seemed to reach its conclusion, a lingering question hung in the air. Who, or what, had truly guided the Mare to that shack? Had it been mere coincidence, or was there a force greater than human understanding at work? Only time would reveal the truth. But for now, the legend of the baby with the extraordinary eyes lived on in the hearts of those who heard it, until the next tale unfolded in the Wild West. The journey continued long after Eleanor, her son, and Jack parted ways. Redemption Springs returned to its usual rhythm, but the tale of the baby with the unusual eyes spread like wildfire, carried by travelers, cowboys, and drifters from one campfire to another. Yet, deep within the heart of the Wild West, where secrets often fester in the shadows, another chapter of the story was about to unfold. Jack Tanner didn't linger in Redemption Spring for long. The restless spirit that had driven him across deserts and through storms refused to settle. He left the town with nothing but the clothes on his back, a horse borrowed from a grateful townsfolk, and a lingering sense of unease. Something about the child's eyes haunted him, a feeling he couldn't quite shake off, as though they had seen things no human mind could comprehend. His path took him south, toward the rugged terrain of the Black Ridge Mountains. It was here, amidst towering pines and icy streams, that Jack encountered a figure who would forever alter his understanding of what had transpired in that shack. A man named Silas Kane, a recluse known only to the few brave souls who dared venture into these unforgiving lands. Silas lived in a cabin perched precariously on the edge of a cliff, its walls blackened by years of exposure to the elements. When Jack arrived, uninvited and unannounced, Silas greeted him not with hostility, but with an eerie calmness that unnerved even the most hardened prospector. "I've been expecting you," Silas said, his voice raspy yet steady. His piercing gaze seemed to pierce through Jack's very soul. "How could you know I was coming?" Jack asked, his hand instinctively hovering near his revolver. "Because," Silas replied, motioning for Jack to sit by the fire, "the Mare led me to believe it." Jack froze. The Mare? The same creature that had guided him to the shack? But how could Silas possibly know about her? As the night wore on, Silas began to weave a tale unlike any Jack had ever heard. He spoke of ancient legends passed down through generations of Native American tribes, legends of children born with extraordinary gifts, their eyes windows to realms unseen by ordinary men. These children were said to be protectors of balance, guardians of nature itself. And when danger loomed, they were hidden away, sometimes buried so deeply in obscurity that even those who sought them out failed to find them. "But why now?" Jack interrupted, his voice tinged with frustration. "Why does all this matter now?" Silas leaned closer, his face illuminated by the flickering flames. "Because the world is changing, Jack. Forces are rising that seek to disrupt the harmony between man and earth. Those forces will stop at nothing to harness the power of such children, for good or ill." Jack listened intently, his mind racing with possibilities. Could Eleanor's fears have been justified? Was her son truly destined for greatness or destruction? The days turned into weeks as Jack remained in Silas' cabin, learning more about the mysteries surrounding the child. Silas shared stories of other encounters, whispers of similar incidents scattered throughout history. Each tale painted a picture of a world far more complex than Jack had ever imagined, one where magic and mystery intertwined with the mundane realities of survival. But then came the twist, the revelation that shattered everything Jack thought he understood. One evening, as the two sat in silence, listening to the wind howl through the trees, Silas broke the quiet with a single question. "Do you remember the moment you first looked into the baby's eyes?" Jack nodded slowly. "Of course. They were different, like they held the weight of the world." "And did you feel anything? Anything unusual?" Jack hesitated, recalling the strange sensation that had washed over him. A mix of awe, fear, and something deeper, almost primal. "Yes," he admitted finally. "It felt like I was being watched, by something much older than the child himself." Silas smiled grimly. "That's because you were. You see, Jack, the baby wasn't the only one watching you. There was someone else, something else, hidden in the shadows of that shack. Something that has been waiting for centuries to awaken." Jack stared at Silas, disbelief warring with dread in his chest. "What are you talking about?" "The mare," Silas explained, his tone dropping to a whisper. "She wasn't just leading you to the baby. She was guiding you to a place of power, a nexus point where the veil between worlds grows thin. That shack, Jack, was built atop an ancient site, a sacred ground protected by spirits long forgotten by mankind." Jack reeled from the implications. If what Silas said was true, then the baby wasn't merely abandoned in the desert. He had been placed there deliberately, perhaps as part of some grand design. And the mare? She hadn't acted alone. She had been guided by forces beyond comprehension. "But why me?" Jack demanded, his voice rising. "Why did it choose me to witness all this?" Silas met his gaze steadily. "Because, Jack Tanner, you are part of the story, too. Your actions, however small they may seem, ripple outward, affecting destinies far greater than your own, whether you realize it or not. You've already begun walking a path that will lead you to places you never dreamed possible, and challenges you might not survive." The words hung heavy in the air, sinking into Jack's consciousness like molten lead. For the first time since leaving Redemption Springs, he felt truly afraid, not for himself, but for the child whose fate he had inadvertently touched. And so, armed with newfound knowledge and a burden heavier than gold, Jack set forth once more. This time, however, he traveled not with blind determination, but with purpose. The mare followed close behind, her presence a constant reminder of the mysteries that lay ahead. Their journey took them through treacherous canyons and dense forests, past ghost towns and forgotten graveyards. Along the way, Jack encountered others who had crossed paths with the legend, their stories fragmented yet consistent, each piece adding depth to the puzzle. Some spoke of blessings brought by the child's presence, while others whispered curses unleashed upon those who sought to exploit his powers. One stormy night, as lightning split the sky and thunder rolled like cannon fire, Jack reached the final destination foretold by Silas, a secluded valley surrounded by jagged peaks, its entrance guarded by a pair of monolithic stones carved with symbols neither man nor beast could decipher. Inside the valley stood a structure unlike anything Jack had ever seen, a temple of sorts, its architecture blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. Here, Silas had warned, lay the truth about the child, the mare, and the forces that bound them together. Here, Jack would either find answers or perish trying. As he stepped cautiously into the valley, the air grew thick with anticipation. Shadows danced along the walls of the temple, taking shapes both familiar and alien. Then, from the depths of the structure, emerged a figure cloaked in darkness, its identity obscured by the dim light. "Welcome, traveler," the figure intoned, its voice resonating like the toll of a bell. "You have come far to seek understanding. But beware, what you learn here may change you forever." Jack swallowed hard, his heart pounding like a war drum. "Tell me," he demanded, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Tell me everything." And so, the figure began to speak, weaving a tapestry of truths and lies that spanned eons, of gods and mortals, of sacrifices made and promises broken, of the child, the mare, and the delicate balance they represented. When the tale ended, Jack stood silent, the weight of it crushing him beneath its enormity. He had entered the valley seeking clarity, but what he found was infinitely more complicated and dangerous. With heavy steps, he retraced his path, the mare trailing silently behind him. The world outside seemed smaller now, less significant in the face of what he knew. Yet, even as doubt crept into his thoughts, one truth remained undeniable. The child with the extraordinary eyes was only the beginning, until the next tale unfolded in the Wild West. The valley behind him, Jack Tanner rode hard through the night, his mind a tempest of revelations and unanswered questions. The mare moved with an unnatural grace, her hooves barely disturbing the earth as they traversed the shadowy expanse of the Wild West. Each step brought them further from the sacred site, yet closer to the inevitable confrontation that awaited. Silas Kane's warnings echoed in Jack's ears like the tolling of a distant bell. Forces are rising that seek to disrupt the harmony between man and earth. And now, having faced the figure in the temple, Jack understood the gravity of those words. The child with extraordinary eyes was not merely a lost soul abandoned in the desert. He was a key, a living symbol of balance in a world teetering on the brink of chaos. But there were others who sought this key, and their intentions were far from noble. As Jack pushed deeper into the wilderness, the air grew thick with tension, as though the very land itself sensed a storm brewing. The stars above seemed dimmer, their light obscured by an unseen presence that lingered just beyond perception. It wasn't long before the first sign appeared, a trail of scorched earth cutting diagonally across their path. The ground was blackened, charred as if struck by lightning, yet no storm clouds marred the horizon. Jack dismounted, his fingers brushing against the still warm soil. His stomach churned. This wasn't natural. Something or someone had passed this way recently, leaving destruction in its wake. The mare whinnied softly, her ears flicking forward as she stared down the desolate path ahead. Jack followed her gaze, squinting into the distance until he saw it. A lone rider silhouetted against a moonlit sky. The figure sat atop a massive stallion, its muscles rippling beneath a coat so dark it seemed to absorb all light. The rider wore a cloak that billowed like smoke, concealing their face entirely. They made no move to approach, simply sitting there, watching. Jack tightened his grip on the reins, every instinct screaming caution. "Who are you?" he called out, his voice carrying over the wind. The figure didn't respond, but their horse took a single step forward, its hooves striking the ground with sound like thunder. Then another step, and another. The mare tensed beside Jack, her body trembling despite her earlier calmness. She knew what approached, and whatever it was, it terrified her. For the first time since finding the baby, Jack felt truly powerless. He reached for his revolver, but even as his hand closed around the grip, he doubted whether any bullet could stop whatever force now advanced upon them. The rider halted a dozen paces away, raising one gloved hand to lower their hood. Beneath lay a face both human and monstrous, scarred and twisted as though burned by fire. Their eyes glowed faintly, not with warmth, but with a cold, predatory light. "You've meddled in things you don't understand," the figure rasped, their voice gravelly and layered with menace. "Give me the child, and I'll let you live." "I don't have a child," Jack replied, his tone steady despite the fear coiling in his chest. "And even if I did, I wouldn't give him to you." A cruel smile spread across the figure's lips, revealing teeth sharpened to points. "Liar," they hissed. "I know the truth. You were there, at the shack, with the mare, with the boy." Jack's breath hitched. How could they possibly know? Had they been watching from afar, hidden among the shadows? Or worse, had they been part of the conspiracy Eleanor had fled? "You're mistaken," Jack said firmly, refusing to back down. "I'm just a prospector, a wanderer. Whatever game you're playing, it doesn't involve me." The figure laughed then, a harsh, guttural sound that sent shivers down Jack's spine. "Oh, but it does. It always has. From the moment you laid eyes on the baby, your fate became entwined with ours. You think you can walk away? That you can pretend none of this matters? Foolish man." Before Jack could respond, the riders snapped their fingers, and the world erupted into chaos. The ground beneath him shook violently, throwing up plumes of dust and debris. Trees groaned and splintered, their roots tearing free from the earth as though alive. Jack stumbled backward, struggling to maintain his footing as the mare reared up, panicked. From the darkness emerged shapes, twisted, grotesque forms that defied description. Some resembled men, but their skin hung loose, flapping like tattered cloth. Others were more animalistic, their claws scraping against the rocks as they circled hungrily. Jack drew his revolver, firing blindly into massive creatures. Bullets found their marks, yet the monsters kept coming, driven by some primal hunger. Then, amidst the carnage, a voice cut through the noise, a voice soft yet commanding, filled with authority and ancient wisdom. "Enough!" The world froze. The creatures stopped moving, their glowing eyes locking onto the source of sound. Slowly, deliberately, the mare stepped forward, her head held high. Behind her walked a figure cloaked in white, their presence radiating calmness, even as chaos swirled around them. "It is done," the newcomer declared, their voice resonating like a hymn. "Leave this place." The scarred rider hesitated, glaring at the newcomer with open hatred. You cannot protect him forever, they snarled. When the time comes, we will take what is ours. With that, they turned their horse and galloped off into the night, their retreating forms swallowed by shadows. The creatures dissipated moments later, melting back into the earth as though they had never existed. Jack sank to his knees, gasping for breath as adrenaline coursed through his veins. The mare nuzzled him gently, offering comfort in a way only she could. When he finally looked up, the cloaked figure stood before him, extending a hand. "Come," they said simply. "There is much you need to learn." Days turned into weeks as Jack traveled alongside the mysterious savior, whose name was never revealed. They journeyed through lands untouched by civilization, places where time seemed to stand still. Along the way, Jack learned fragments of the truth, not just about the child, but about the forces vying for control of the world. He discovered that the legends Silas had spoken were real, that there were indeed beings who existed outside the boundaries of human understanding. These entities, both benevolent and malevolent, had waged war across millennia, their battles shaping the course of history in ways few mortals could comprehend. And at the center of this conflict stood individuals like the child, beings born with gifts so powerful they could tip the scales in either direction. Yet, as Jack delved deeper into these mysteries, he began to realize something unsettling. He himself was changing. The encounter in the valley, the battle with the scarred rider, the presence of the cloaked figure, all of it had left an indelible mark on his soul. He no longer saw the world through the same lens as before. Every shadow held potential danger. Every stranger carried secrets waiting to be uncovered. One evening, as they camped beneath a canopy of stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch, the cloaked figure spoke again. "You carry a burden, Jack Tanner," they said, their voice tinged with sadness. "Not just because of what you've seen, but because of who you've become. You are neither fully mortal nor fully bound to the earthly realm. Your path lies somewhere in between." Jack stared into the fire, feeling the weight of those words settle heavily on his shoulders. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked quietly. "How do I fix this?" "There is no fixing," came the reply. "Only choosing. Will you embrace the role fate has thrust upon you, or will you try to escape it, and doom us all in the process?" Jack didn't answer immediately. Instead, he thought back to the baby with the extraordinary eyes, to Eleanor's desperate plea, to the mare's unwavering guidance. He thought of Silas' warnings and the scarred rider's threats. Most of all, he thought of the countless lives that might hang in the balance depending on his decision. "I'll choose," he said finally, his voice firm, "but I won't do it alone." The cloaked figure nodded approvingly. "Good, for the road ahead is fraught with peril, and even the strongest among us require allies." As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Jack rose to his feet, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. The mare stood beside him, her presence steadfast and unyielding. Together, they set forth once more, their destination unknown, but their purpose clear, until the next tale unfolded in the Wild West.